Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Saturday Night Sleepover. I'm your host, Charli, and I wanted to give you a heads up. This episode that comes out this week, it is going to be a two-parter. I was not planning on making it a two-parter when we recorded, but it's just that good that it had to be broke apart into two different parts because it's 2 hours long. So since we weren't planning for it to be a two-parter episode, it may end more abruptly than you were expecting. So I just wanted you to be aware of that and have a heads up. Without further ado, here's this week's episode. Hope you like it. Love you. Bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Saturday Night Sleepover. I'm your host, Charli, and today we have two guests, Caitlin and Elizabeth Hood from the Escaping Eating Substack and recently podcast.
Yes.
So we have all come to you today to talk about a show that Beth just binged. I binged like a week ago. Caitlin has never seen, and she's going to get her mind blown. And that show happens to be The Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives.
The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, because there's also a show called The Real Housewives
of Salt Lake City. Yes.
Are they all Mormon?
Yeah. Well, it's complicated. It's not an easy yes or no.
But if you live in Utah, you have a highly likelihood of being a Mormon. So, so the two shows do have a bit of crossover.
Yeah. Namely, okay. So I like to think of it like have you watched Real Housewives of Salt Lake City?
I've watched a couple of episodes because I first read Heather Gay's book, Bad Mormon, and because of that, I watched a little bit of Real Housewives, and I had a hard time doing it because I usually don't like reality TV at all.
So this was like a treat.
It's more like, it's a guilty pleasure for sure. And at first it was almost like I was taking some medicine or something because I was like, I just can't stand this. But I have to say it grew on me. I don't know about you, but
yeah.
I mean, are you much of a reality TV watcher?
I watched it back in the heyday, but these days, no.
Yeah.
Never.
I don't
Unless
either.
it's a cooking show. I like reality cooking shows a lot.
Yeah, those are good. I got in a Chopped reel like a while ago. Anyway, we probably should do a disclaimer on the first part of this episode because Beth and I are we've watched this show and we're coming at this from where we are doing our perspectives in this moment in time. And we acknowledge that topic might bring up topics that make people uncomfortable, or we might use language that makes people uncomfortable. So be ready and buckle up for our unpacking of this show because we both grew up Mormon. So we both have our experiences that we lived in that time, and now we have different experiences that we're living now.
Which are wildly different.
They're wildly different. And so it's going to be good, but just if you have littles in the car or something, maybe keep them in mind and put your headphones in.
Yes, highly recommend. So, okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
You go ahead and start because,
okay.
Look, first of all, when we had this idea, and it was like, she went in and did a whole research paper of it, like while she was watching the show. So I was like, you take it away because you have literally 8 pages that you wrote.
8 pages of notes that I took over the last 2 weeks watching this show. I'm a little bit obsessed. Okay, but first we have to talk about what this show is even about.
Yes.
So it begins with Mom Talk, which is a group of moms who got together in the Salt Lake City area and Provo and started doing these TikTok dances with each other. Like it was as simple as that. And they called it Mom Talk because they're all moms of one persuasion or another. Most of them are Mormons. I think almost all of them are Mormons. So that's Mom Talk. The leader of Mom Talk is Taylor Frankie Paul. She is the one with the dark skin, the long hair, and usually standing in the front of these groups of women who are dancing together on TikTok, right?
That sounds fun.
It's fun. Okay, so one of the things that it makes people uncomfortable right away, and I did my research too, I went and kind of dug into Taylor Frankie Paul's TikTok, is that a lot of times they're bearing their midriffs, or they're wearing shoulderless tops or tank tops or things like that. And in the Mormon culture, that is considered to be immodest clothing right there. And they're dancing very suggestively in a lot of these, they're sexy. And so they're really flaunting their sexiness in these TikToks. And so that also created a little bit of dissonance with people who are watching these videos and saying, okay, I thought you guys were Mormon. This does not look Mormon to me. And so that was the only situation for a while. Then came the big bombshell. Taylor Frankie Paul got on TikTok one day and confessed that she was getting a divorce from her husband because a bunch of the people within the TikTok group had been doing what was called soft swinging. And soft swinging, do you know what that is?
I mean, I know what swinging is. I don't know what soft swinging is.
Grab your wine. So soft swinging is basically they were swapping couples within each other's presence and never going all the way, right? So, they would have parties together, these groups of moms with their husbands. I'm sure they had babysitters. I hope to God they had babysitters. And they would just get a little wild and a little crazy. And so yeah, that scandal blew up the Mom Talk community because she implicated other people within the scandal. She got a divorce. It just turned into a massive drama, which created a bigger following than they already had before. So most of these women have 4 million plus followers on TikTok, and they've had millions and millions of views. So
She took a note from Kim K.
Right. So that's our setting,
Okay.
And all of this happens before the show even starts. This was all like pre-show.
Mm-hmm. So of course this creates the perfect drama.
This is the casting.
Right. Yes, this is where you start with the casting. Now, as I understand it, a lot of the people who were implicated in it in the first place are not even with these group of women who actually did the show. So, yeah, that's a deeper dive than I'm willing to do. But the women who are in this show, there are 8 of them, and they're mostly in their early 20s to early 30s. They all claim to be Mormon, and we follow their lives over the course of a couple months. So in this show, Taylor has divorced her husband, she has a new boyfriend, and she's pregnant with this boyfriend. And it kind of goes from there. So the show begins with Taylor's arrest for domestic violence and police cam footage of that. So she's surrounded by controversy on every side, and she's kind of the instigator of everything. So that's where we begin. And the first thing that any Mormon sees when this started, becoming something that people were wanting to watch, all we had to go on was a trailer, right?
Yeah.
Now, did you watch the trailer?
I think so. Well, more than the trailer, I watched like the buzz in my feeds.
Yeah. So I first heard about it not from the trailer. I had no idea. I first heard about it from other Mormons. And I saw person after person on my Facebook feed warning, like begging me not to watch it. Like literally, and they all had a very similar statement. And so I think it came from like a prepared church statement that then people kind of put their own words to and sent out on social media.
And or it was somewhat like one of those, I didn't have any of this in my feed, but it was somewhat like one of those like, pass it on or you'll get 7 years of bad luck, but like pass it on or you're gonna make your whole feed watch this thing that's so sinful.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know if you've ever heard of the Streisand effect. There's this
Hi, dog.
Oh, my dog just came in.
That's a laugh.
This is actually a
He left
teddy
the door
bear.
open, and I knew that was a possibility of happening.
Hi there.
Go on out, Sky. Go. She's really excited. So, okay, back to the buzz that was going on.
Okay.
So the Streisand effect is that there was this picture of Barbara Streisand's house that was just taken from a camera that was documenting coastal erosion. And she found out that this picture existed of her house. It was very obscure. It wasn't going anywhere. But she started making a big deal about it and hired an attorney to fight its presence on the internet. Well, because she did that, it exploded.
Everyone wanted to see
Everyone wanted to see it now because she was fighting it. Same effect here. So I think the Mormon Church putting out their statement and everybody getting on Facebook and saying, please don't watch it. I mean, it's like a car wreck.
Yeah.
You can't.
Or it's like,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about this a few days ago. She was like, what happens if my son tries to date a girl that I don't want him to date? And I'd be like, don't tell her not to date him. Just kidding. That'll make him want to date her more.
Yes. There's totally a backlash effect.
Yeah.
So that's the backlash effect that I experienced, and I became obsessed with watching it. And then I started talking to Charli about it, and I was like, oh, not only are we going to watch it, we're going to make a podcast.
And here we are.
Is this dog allowed on the couch?
No.
No.
Yeah.
The dog.
There's no rules today.
Okay. So she's going to probably be active for a little bit, and then she'll sit down. Sky, sit.
That's allowed.
Which is fine.
This
makes-
is Saturday Night Sleepover, so
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
this is okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't do any editing.
We invite dogs to
and
sleep
and it interruptions. One of my favorite interruptions ever of the whole show is one of my friends had her kids playing recorders in the background, and it was like too late. She couldn't get them to stop because she's like in the middle of the recording, so you just hear them in the back, and it's wonderful.
If she knocks
was the
over the
best.
camera, I'm so sorry.
We'll fix it. It'll be okay.
So anyway, so now you have kind of the background of why we're doing this podcast. So so I'm just curious your overall opinion of the show.
I think it's like junior Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And so it's like these much younger girls that are going through like the beginnings of the same thing. So like in Utah, like the Utah starter pack is like Botox and boob job and blonde hair and like perfect in every way. And so the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City kind of embody that, but they're like in their 40s. And so these are the same kind of like behaviors, like just kind of like starting out while they're still young. Like these girls, like there's no telling how much Botox they have in their 22. And speaking of which, for Botox, like they would go and get like laughing gas. We didn't even put this in the notes, did we?
Oh, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
That's
Laughing
okay.
gas?
Yeah. Okay.
can improvise.
All right. So like Mormons have a really strict,
Code of health.
health code is a good way to put it.
It's called the Word of Wisdom.
And they're not allowed to take any mind altering substances, but on this show, like all the Mormons go get laughing gas when they get Botox,
help with the needles,
to
like
help
the
with the
scary-
needles, and so like helps numb them from the needles, but like it's like their loophole that they found because they're like, do they come for the laughing gas or do they come for the Botox? It's like a theme in the show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and another loophole that Mormons have, because they don't drink alcohol and they don't smoke and they don't do drugs, like their drug of choice is soda, like sugar.
Which is why we brought our dirty sodas, which were invented in Utah,
Cheers.
but we
Were
have
these really invented in Utah?
I think
Well,
so.
this one.
well, at least
I wouldn't
So-
be surprised if a Mormon owns this company here.
I would absolutely not. That is 100% what I think happened. But okay, so Swig.
I know about that one. That one's a big one.
That one's a big one. But like in 2012, I lived in St. George, Utah, and that's where the first Swig was. And it literally was a shack outside of the testing center at the college. And like it just exploded. And now we have two of them 1,000 miles away from where they started.
Yeah. Yeah, and not only that, it's featured prominently in the show. Not just swig, but like any kind of pop. Like it's kind of hilarious because it's
Sugar's fine.
sugar's fine, and it just kind of is a bit sophomoric. Like you see these adults and they're having parties and stuff, but they're like filling their champagne glasses with pop, soda, you know, and they're
And that is like pretty
Toasting.
pervasive in the culture in general. because she and I both went to like Mormon colleges.
Yeah.
And so, like, I experienced, like, when you have the regular college experience, like, you typically, like, figure out what it's like to be an adult, and, like, these people still have not really had those experiences, because it's, like, the, like, there's a term for it. It's, like, the youthification or something like that of adults. Like, they, like, dumb everything down, and, like, you're not even, like, a real adult.
Yeah.
When you are like 25 years old.
Yeah. It's like you're suspended in adolescence or something like that.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So
anyway,
that's a deeper dive.
that's a different thing. That's not part of the show. That's just like a cultural thing.
Yeah. So from my perspective, like, I didn't expect much. I was coming in, and first episode, I'm like, kind of agreeing with the Mormons that this is not representative of what it is like to be a Mormon. Now, that said, I grew up in Missouri. I spent several years in Utah going to BYU, but all the Botox, all of the,
Yeah, perfect blonde, tiny.
that was not my experience of Mormonism. So I get what they're saying. But the further I got into the show, the more I realized, no, this is Mormonism. It's just Utah Mormonism. And that's why you probably left, right?
Yeah, Utah, I'd never fit in Utah. Not once. If people would give me the time of day to talk to me, they would realize that I was really cool and that they enjoyed talking to me. But most of the time, people just like it was like, that one's not like the others.
Yeah.
And like wrote me off before they even spoke to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, if you have like brown hair, and it's just one of those cultures where it's very, very competitive for women. And maybe we should go right into the Botox and stuff, because, we talked about it being a part of Utah culture, but why?
Yeah.
Do you have some theories?
I think you do. You should jump into it.
Okay. All right. So I did a deep dive in research on this, because all of the women in this show have lip fillers, Botox, and boob jobs. It's kind of weird. There has been a study out that in Utah, women, there are about per 100,000 people, there are 4 plastic surgeons per 100,000 people, and like $6.4 million spent on cosmetics and things like that. In comparison with a town like Oklahoma City, which is about the same size as Salt Lake City, and it's a fraction of the cost that women are spending on their appearance. So there was this article done in Time magazine, and they went into it from a demographic perspective. And when they looked at the numbers of men versus women, they found out that Mormon women outnumber Mormon men about 2 to 1. So it's highly competitive. And in a culture where marriage is like essential for your eternal salvation.
That's why they have to have so many wives. No,
that's actually
2 for 1.
There you go.
Well, and that's been like cited as a possibility for why polygamy actually even existed in the first place. I don't think it's the real reason at all. But this idea of there being an overage, an overabundance of righteous women as compared to righteous men.
Is it because the men are leaving?
Yeah, the men are leaving. They're like the church in droves. Now, I think more women are leaving now too. I think that feminism has created a greater number of women that are leaving. And from my experience, a lot of the people that I know who are leaving it's like the woman is leading the way in the relationship. So, but that demographic, especially in Utah, creates a big problem for women. And so, since there is this inequality and this competition, then you start having more and more emphasis on appearance. And doubled with that cultural pressure, you have, Utah. Yeah. It's just like, it's almost like watching like a National Geographic film. It's like watching wild animals in the wild, like women in Utah.
Yeah,
like
it's pretty, it's
a whole phenomenon.
It is pretty crazy. Just to see like what lengths they'll go to stay youthful looking and to have a certain look. Like, it might not even be youthful. Like, every single one of them has the same kind of hairstyle. Every single one of them like has similar hair coloring, and like, even, like, so Colton grew up in small town Utah. Mm-hmm. And so he always, like, has a different perspective of it, because small town Utah is a little bit different. It's rural. Different. It's like more of a rural community, and people stick together and help each other out more than in a larger city, like, of above 20,000. Mm-hmm. So, where was I going with that? So he goes into Walmart, like, now that we've been living here for a while, and he's like, it's kind of crazy how done up everybody is at the store. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't go to the store without mascara on if you live there. Like, it's like a whole thing. Like, you might see somebody you know, and then if you see somebody you know, then you have to stop and talk to them. And what if they saw you when you weren't looking your best? And, like, everybody has to look their best, and then everybody has to, like, have better than the person next to them too. Mm-hmm. It's not just in, like, dating too. It's like, once you get married, then your house has to look cleaner, nicer, and better than everybody else's in the neighborhood too. Yeah. Like, it's a whole thing.
It's very competitive when you become a mother. The expectations are not only high for your appearance, they're high for your mothering prowess. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole, like, army of Mormon mommy bloggers who have been out on Instagram, like, and this has been ever since blogging was a thing. So this is, 15 years of Mormon mommy bloggers who have been out pushing this unattainable expectation of perfection in momming, which was already a problem for Mormon women. So not only do you have record numbers of women getting Botox fillers and boob jobs, you also have a record number of women who are on antidepressants. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine. It's not healthy. And they're not really happy, right?
But now, they look happy.
Yeah. And I can cite a ton of examples of women who are not like this, of Mormon women who are grounded, who are good, who are living life and being real. So, but unfortunately, this is a trend. It's something that, the statistics are way too high in this culture. So, yeah.
It gets intense.
Yeah. And, when you talk about it from the perspective of this competition, in the show, the women are in one scene comparing each other to how Mormon they are. Like, on the Mormon scale of how Mormon or less Mormon are you. I think it was like episode 3 or 4. And
so the one dancing scale, like 3?
Yes.
Well, they're all dancing. That's the thing.
Oh,
they're all dancing, and they're all, like, using dancing to pay for their lives. Every single one of them is the breadwinner in their relationship.
Yeah.
How do they make money?
On TikTok. They have millions of followers. TikTok pays you.
TikTok pays you what?
Does TikTok pay you? See, I don't even know this.
Yeah, TikTok pays you per view once you get to a certain echelon.
Okay. And they also started getting brand deals. And so you hold a product up in your TikTok, and suddenly you get like $20,000 for it. So you get to that point where you have millions of followers, and then you get brand deals. And that's where you become an influencer, right? That's the whole deal. So on this Mormon scale, like, they kind of range from what they consider saints and sinners. And in our day, we called it, like, devout versus, like, Jack Mormons, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, a Jack Mormon is somebody who maybe drinks or maybe, I don't know.
Doesn't go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Is Jack like somebody's brother? Where do they get?
I don't know. I don't know where the origins of that came from.
Yeah, but it's a term that most Mormons know about. If you're a Jack Mormon, you're a Mormon.
I'm trying to think of, like, what an updated term for that would be. I can't even think of one because I don't hang out in those circles.
No, I think Jack Mormon is still what it's called. Like, my grandfather was a Jack Mormon because he would go to the country club and drink a glass of whiskey every once in a while. So, but he still went to church. And so on the scale of Mormonism, you have, like, people who are less active and less devout, and you have people who are more active and more devout, right? And so they're comparing each other on the scale. And this is something that, if you're a Mormon, we're all looking at, right? And, like, what are you looking for? When you're looking for how devout somebody is, like, you're usually looking for garment lines, right? So
Garment lines?
Garments.
Oh, the underwear.
The underwear.
Like panty lines? Oh,
yes,
my goodness.
But think bike shorts.
Yeah. So when a Mormon goes to the temple for the first time, they covenant to wear this underwear, this special underwear that's considered sacred. It goes almost all the way to the knee. It's white. And you have a pair of shorts that goes almost to the knee, and you have a top that is a t-shirt, and it has a cap sleeve, and then a nice high neckline. I mean, it's not super high. Like, you can still wear boat necks and stuff. But I'm watching the show, and these women have cleavage, like massive cleavage, especially in the interview shots that they're doing. And so at the beginning of the show, I'm just thinking, like, these are not Mormons. Like, it makes sense that Mormons feel like this isn't representative of them, because obviously none of them are wearing garments, right?
Yeah.
If they did, it would be sticking out of their shirt.
It would, yeah, because I mean, you have very deep cut.
Is that like, okay, like, and you have your thong sticking out? You have your garment sticking out?
I think that those carry different connotations, but you're in the right neighborhood.
Well, they're very not sexy.
Right.
They are like the antithesis.
They're like grandpa.
Yeah. And that's, why we say modesty is like such a priority, is because you have to cover up your garments. And so most Mormon women I know have shorts that go all the way to their knees, or they just wear capris during the summer. And they're always covering up, and they have higher necklines. And there's also, we are taught that like modest is hottest. Right? Like, that's
because if you dress too immodestly, you will sway the thoughts of the men. I don't know if that's somewhat universal.
It's like the mini skirt phenomenon.
Christian,
what was she wearing? Yeah, exactly. I know. That's purity culture all over Christianity. That is not unique to Mormonism. So
right.
So modesty is a big thing. If you see somebody on the street, you can usually form an instant opinion about how Mormon they are by the modesty of their clothes. Sometimes you can see the garment lines, and that's a dead giveaway right there. It's like, they call it, what do they call it? Like the smile.
Yeah, like in like deep Utah culture, I feel like that's a thing.
Like the Mormon smile.
Yeah, the Mormon smile or something like that.
Because it's like the line of
I've only heard that like one time.
That's funny.
Yeah, so you have got that. And then, like, besides the visual things, then you have the things that are detectable by smell, right? The smelly sins. Like if you drink.
Oh, I never even got taught this.
You didn't get taught the smelly sins?
No. They weren't referred to as like smelly sins.
Yeah. So maybe we talk about this more. Like, I don't know how deep you got into ex-Mormon culture.
I'm not deep into ex-Mormon culture hardly at all.
Okay, so there are a lot of Facebook groups out there that are, communities for people who are leaving the church, because it can be pretty traumatic when you leave.
Well, because all of these Mormons are out there policing everybody, so the minute you start looking different, they like shut their doors and shut everything off to you, and you don't have anybody to connect with. So that's why, like, when I lived in Utah, I had like no friends, because it was like so hard for me to make friends, because people saw me and thought I was different, so they never would speak to me.
Yeah. So when I left, I was living in Wisconsin, and then we moved back here, and people didn't talk to us much. Like, we didn't get any contact from the church after we left. And so my ex-husband and I, and so we were kind of outcasts from our community. And so we turned to online communities for support. And in those communities, they have like a whole host of like acronyms and like sayings and, ways of like kind of reframing our experience and kind of making fun of it, being a little irreverent about it, because, you go from everything being so sacred to you want to be a little profane and just test that out for size,
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the smelly sins thing came from.
Oh, probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have other acronyms like TBM is True Believing Mormon.
Yeah, I knew that one.
Yeah, and we have Never Mows. That's somebody who's never been a Mormon. TSCC. Do you know what that one stands for?
No.
It's the so-called church.
Oh.
Yeah.
The one I know is TK Smoothies. That's what I was like.
My gosh. So tell Caitlin what a TK smoothie is. Did they mention that in the show?
No, not at all. This is just a Mormon culture thing. So, okay, just so you know, I have a coworker that I sit and eat lunch with her most days, and she's obsessed with like high demand religions, and so I just like go into all the different facts. And I've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm still blowing her mind. So just know that in order to explain one thing, you have to explain 50 other things, and TK Smoothie is one of those things.
It's like you're ready to go down the rabbit hole.
Oh, God.
You're going to have so much fun.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. It's just so ridiculous. Okay, so in Mormonism, you believe that every person comes to this world to have a body to experience Mormonism and do all the Mormonism things. And so some of those things, like, since there's more people than there are Mormons, like if you die, then the Mormons have to go and do that stuff for you, so that
Like baptize you and
do all this kind of stuff.
Like after you're
Anyway,
dead.
After you die, there's like 3 levels of heaven, right? Okay, there's like heaven where, and then there's an outer darkness instead of hell.
Okay. There's no hell.
There's no hell, just outer darkness.
Outer darkness.
Outer darkness is for people who like deny the faith and murder people. So that's
You could be Mormon and murder someone. It's still bad.
Yeah, you go to outer darkness.
Well, if you murder anybody, well, except for Brigham Young.
Yeah.
Brigham Young could murder people, apparently.
Yeah, that's a whole other
Look
thing.
up Mountain Meadows Massacre. Yeah, go Google it.
There you go.
Keep going.
So, there's 3 levels of heaven, right? One of them is like medium, okay. Next one is okay, great. And the top one is like VIP, everybody wants to be there. You have to be Mormon to go to VIP heaven. And then, so...
You got to say the names of them.
All right, so the bottom one is the celestial kingdom. The middle one is the terrestrial kingdom, and the top one is celestial kingdom. Mind you, there's also 3 other ones inside of the celestial kingdom that are even more VIP than the VIP heaven.
Okay.
Okay, so there's all these layers, right? Okay, so the terrestrial and the celestial, it's a TK Smoothie is, if you're not in celestial VIP heaven, apparently you're just like, there's no gender in the other ones, and you're just like smooth down there like a Ken doll.
Like a Ken doll.
So it's a celestial kingdom smoothie.
You don't get genitals until you get into like the VIP.
Yeah, you don't get genitals until you get to the VIP heaven.
This is kind of an obscure teaching.
Yeah,
Because I had never heard of it until after I left the church.
yeah, me either.
But then I had to go digging.
And there's real like canonized scripture about it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just kind of got lost down the memory hole, or purposefully put down the memory hole because it's so embarrassing.
That's the thing about the Mormon Church is they don't ever say no, this wasn't a thing. They just say this is the new thing, and we don't talk about the old thing anymore. And so we just move on to this other thing, and you're like, wait, what? Huh? What about that old thing? And they're like, what do you mean that old thing? We don't do that. We do this.
Yeah.
Which is somewhat what I think, like, because I keep trying to think, like, okay, the church is like one of the richest entities in the world.
Yeah.
And there's this show that's painting somewhat of a negative light on them. You would think they would have the money to shut it down if they wanted to shut it down. So what is their like conspiracy angle? Yeah.
Well, okay, so interestingly, people always say follow the money, right? I believe. Okay, I'm gonna grab my notes. Hulu.
All right.
Okay, this was produced by Jeff Jenkins Productions in association with 3BMG and Walt Disney Television Alternative. Walt Disney is partially owned by the church.
Yeah, I know.
So
they had to say 100%.
Maybe, like, I don't know. I have my theories on how much they get their fingers in that or not, but the church invests in all kinds of things.
They were able to control what was seen.
Yeah.
And
Maybe.
it probably wasn't that bad.
Well,
right?
They stand to profit from this doing well, just like anything else in the Walt Disney chain of television stations, you know? And so who knows how deep it goes and how deep the money goes. But, you know, the church has a long history of investing in things that are contrary to its belief system. Like Victoria's Secret, they invested in that. And like, you know, it's this famous thing that Thomas S. Monson, who was the prophet before the current one, I think, he was the one who presided over the church when the church built this great big mall in the middle of Salt Lake City. The symbol of corporate capitalism in America. And he is famous for being at the ribbon cutting the ribbon and then saying, "Let's go shopping," you know? And it's just like, all of us who are kind of outside of the church, I've been gone for over a decade. So this happened after I left. And on all these ex-Mormon groups, we're all just sitting there like, you really? Wow. Like, yes. And if you look at like the corporation aspect of the church, like it's not even called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on its tax documents. It's the corporation of the president of the Church of
And then
Jesus
there's
Christ
also
of Latter-day-
Enzyme Pink, which is a shell corporation.
Yes.
What is it?
Enzyme Pink.
Peak. Yeah. Maybe it's pink for Victoria's Secret.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I just misspoke. I tend to think like they said it was okay because like, have you ever heard of like the conspiracy theory that like, okay, so say Walt Disney is frozen, whatever, like he froze his body just before he died so that they could revive him whenever the aging stopped or whatever. That's a conspiracy theory, right? So, but Disney didn't want people Googling Walt Disney Frozen, so they made a movie called Frozen. So that's what's at the top of the Google list. So maybe there was something that was like the secret lives of Mormon wives that the church wanted to cover up.
So they could have this approved secret life published and visible and talked about. Because it's really just mediocre content, right? Like, I mean, come on.
Yes.
We could get more secret, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
for sure.
the drama that y'all have brought up is not very
No, it's
risque.
actually pretty
Mild.
Yeah, it's pretty mild compared to, I don't know,
Like
what's out
actual
there.
Mormon
like
culture.
when you really think about any of the secret lives show, there's always some.
Yeah. You know, the real secrets of Mormonism are things like what goes on in the Mormon temples.
Right.
Which you're not allowed to talk about if you're a Mormon. Like, once you go through, you take a vow of silence.
You have to gut yourself if
Yeah.
you talk about it.
Yes, you know about those penalties. Yeah, like by the time I went through the temple, they didn't have the penalties anymore, but my parents would have had the penalties when they went through the temple. Those are scary.
Do you
Google
think
that one, too.
anybody's ever done it?
I think that,
Well, did you watch Under the Banner of Heaven?
oh yeah, like there have been fringe groups that have engaged in what they call blood atonement.
She said fringe, not French. It kind of sounded like you said French. I was like, the Church of French is not like that in France. Fringe.
Fringe groups, yeah. So you get the real crazies, and they'll go and find the really obscure old doctrine like Brigham Young's doctrine of blood atonement, which was probably underlying some of the Mormon Meadows massacres type stuff. But modern day, these guys, they go crazy. Maybe they're bipolar, maybe they're schizophrenic. They start to believe that they are the new prophet, and then they start tearing people up.
So that's a real thing, like
It is
murdering
a real thing.
from the past of Mormons.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, most religions have it. Let's talk about crusades, you know?
Yeah,
Like, there's-
exactly.
There's
Like
lots of
You look up the
horror
Liberian
and all.
cults, and that was based in Mormonism, and they were practicing blood atonement too. So, yeah, they're out there, and fundamentalist groups and polygamy's still a thing in Utah. Just
Is it
not
legal there?
No,
No.
it's just not in the mainstream. It's splinter groups that still practice polygamy.
But I was always wondered, like the show that what is it, Sister Wives? Did he not ever get in trouble? Like, I mean,
But he wasn't really like a part of the main like sect. He was part of the fringe groups that was still practicing another way.
but
So
wouldn't it be like? But if it's illegal, like wouldn't like somebody be like,
okay,
knock,
so
knock, knock.
here's how it works
Not
in
supposed to
polygamous
do that.
culture. They marry their first wife, and then their second wife has only like a spiritual marriage.
So it's not
legal. It's not a legal marriage, but it's a spiritual marriage. One time, I used to live in southern Utah, and there was a pretty like famous sect, like the Warren Jeffs sect of like polygamists. Yeah. And so you would be at the doctor's office, and you would they dress very differently than mainstream people, and so you would see them at the doctor's office, and they'd be like, well. Because you know how you have to be like, well, this is my person that has my insurance. And then they're like, what's your relationship? One time I was there and it was a polygamous lady. And she was like, what's your relationship? And she said, mistress.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Is that covered on insurance?
I guess so. If they pay for your insurance. But if they have your kids.
Wow. Okay.
Then, yeah.
Those insurance plans are going to be like, how many dependents?
Exactly.
87?
Yeah. Well, you know, the polygamy thing, it makes me wonder how much those deep roots in Mormonism then kind of pop up. Because one of the things you also find in Mormon culture is sexual repression. Big time. Like, you're not supposed to have sex before you get married. And so that's why, you know, a lot of the women in this show, they all got married very young. You know, one of them had a baby when she was 16. That may have been, I don't know if she was married at that point.
No, I think, okay, so
she
that's...
had to get married.
Yeah, that's another thing that happens in Utah. I don't know if this is like a thing that happens like everywhere or just in Mormon culture or just in Christian culture. Yeah. Whatever. But if you get pregnant, then you have to get married to that person right then.
Yeah, and that's a cultural thing. It's not it's not like doctrinal law, but it is very much the culture to do that. And you're going to get a lot of pressure from your community, which is what Taylor was getting in this show. So Taylor Frankie Paul, she gets pregnant with her boyfriend. She decides that she wants to move in with him, but she is afraid to get married because she's kind of traumatized, and rightfully so, right? And so she just doesn't. She doesn't want to jump into this quickly again, which any smart woman would do, you know? Yeah. But she's getting tons of pressure from her parents to just marry this guy. And she's getting tons of pressure from him, tons of pressure from the culture. And so she's practically going crazy by the time she's about to have this baby. And that it follows her journey throughout the show. And it ends like the season finale. She has her baby. So yeah.
With the boyfriend.
Yeah, with the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And they didn't get married. I think they broke up, actually.
Did they?
I think I saw like an Instagram reel or something.
Maybe so.
They broke up.
Yeah.
But I've experienced that as part of the culture, too. Like, I didn't get pregnant, but Colton and I moved in together before we got married. And my parents called me every day and told me I was going to hell if I didn't get married.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Just living together was not okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I got married... Gosh, like between the actual courtship and my engagement was about 45 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 23 years old.
Oh,
old maid.
That's
No,
old
just
for,
kidding.
It is
yeah.
culture. Yes, I went on a mission. And so I spent 1.5 years in the Netherlands where I wasn't dating, and I really wanted to do that. And so, yeah, I was one of the lucky ones, I guess, that I didn't get married as young. But even so, that's young. And it was a very quick courtship because in the Mormon faith, if you mess up before your marriage, then you can't go get married in the temple. And you'll have to have a civil wedding first.
In order to go to the temple, you have to sit down with a church leader and go through a list of questions that are like, are you sexually pure? Do you pay 10% of your money to the church? Are you subscribed to any groups that have fights with the church? Like seriously, there's like a whole list.
Interview.
And they do this to children.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, okay, so that brings up another topic. So these worthiness interviews, you start them when you're like 12, right? I think that's when you start them. And you have one when you get baptized too, at age 8. But at each one of these worthiness interviews, they ask you about whether or not you obey the law of chastity. And historically in the church, especially in like interviews with teenagers, these questions can get very pointed and very specific. And so there was a culture for a long time of kids going into an interview with a bishop alone and being asked very, very sensitive, very graphic questions about what they did to themselves, what they've experienced with others. If someone came into confess that they had been molested. There would be questions about how, what happened, what you were wearing. Like, so there was a man who, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but there was a guy who had some protests. Sam something. It'll come back to me at a certain point. But there was a protest movement a few years ago to try to stop these worthiness interviews because they really did a lot of psychological damage to teenagers. And so one of the characters in this show, so we have Whitney, who's becomes the villain of this show.
Okay.
Which I don't think she necessarily warranted.
It's villain light.
Yeah, it's villain light. Yeah, she just there's a lot of just immaturity going on, and friends dropping friends, and people dropping out of the group chat. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was like a whole episode. They just were like, if any of you add her back into the group chat, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna kick you out.
Yes. They had this screenshot of Whitney left the group chat, and it's zoomed in no, Whitney left the group chat. It's just huge. And I mean, you know what that means, right? If somebody leaves a group chat.
Oh gosh, so, it's like slamming the door.
It is. It's so funny because this group, they're TikTokers, and so their culture of social media is intense.
Yeah.
So intense. So anyway, so Whitney's husband, Connor, apparently had a profile on Tinder. And and when she found out about it, they skipped town. They went and lived in Hawaii.
They lived in Hawaii. They moved to Hawaii.
For 2 months.
Must be nice.
Yeah. And so they come back, and there's a scene where they're sitting next to each other, and Connor's in tears saying, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I never meant to hurt you. And, I had problems in my past. And so I dug a little bit deeper into Connor's story because a lot of people were really getting onto him for that action. Turns out that Connor was molested when he was 5. And so people who have sexual trauma in their past, especially boys, and especially if you have these worthiness interviews regularly as a priesthood holder, it really screws you up. And
well, I was just going to say there's this whole other phenomenon in Mormon culture where you are not encouraged to have a sexual relationship with yourself at all. In fact, you are discouraged highly from it. And so anytime you have a sexual relationship with yourself, it's deemed as a porn addiction.
Yeah.
And so they legitimately set up addiction 12-step programs for Mormon boys that are 12 years old.
Oh.
And they go through life believing that they have a sex addiction or a porn addiction.
Oh.
When they're doing what's natural for teenage boys to do.
Not even necessarily looking at...
Yeah.
No, just okay, can we say the word?
Sure.
Masturbation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to pour myself another glass of wine.
Go
I
for it.
prefer this much more than the pop. The pop's fine. It is super, super sweet. And after I left the church, I made an intense effort to change my palate. And I started in, when you leave the church, you've never had coffee before. I am going to get back to this, so don't let me, forget what we were just about to talk about. But, you've never drank coffee before. You've never had wine before. So all of these, bitter and dark tastes, your palate is not used to at all. And so I started with, very sweet coffees and lattes and very sweet cocktails. And I slowly worked my way into things like wine and beer and darker coffees and less sugar in my coffee. So I'm at the point now where I drink black coffee or just with a little bit of cream, and I love my wine and this sweet. Oh my gosh, we got these. Thank you for buying this for me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I just wanted to, I wish that they was swig. I wish that swig was on the way here because I would have just got swig cups and we would have poured the wine in those.
It's an interesting taste, but it's so damn sweet. Okay. So back to, we were talking about the worthiness interviews. What was I about to say?
You just said, can we say the word masturbation?
Okay, there we go.
Masturbation.
Okay. Now, you guys, so this is part of my story. So on my Substack, Escaping Eden, I'm going to be telling a very, very strange story. And it really begins with my ex-husband's quote unquote masturbation addiction. And I have a great degree, even though he's also a narcissist and he also did a lot of terrible things to me. I also know that the church really, really messed him up because he was doing something that was normal for boys to do, and yet he got into this cycle of messing up and then feeling guilty and then going and confessing and feeling the weight fall off his shoulders from confession and feeling like, okay, I'm good again with God. But then, of course, another night comes around and the whole cycle repeats itself over and over again. And some boys will totally disassociate from it. They'll just lie and they're fine. But my ex-husband was he was kind of like addicted to the cycle of confession too. And so I think that the church
is it kind of like exposing yourself? I mean, in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Caitlin, you're so perceptive.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Okay, I just had an epiphany. Because yes, that was involved too. And yes. Okay, my mind's a little bit I'm gonna have to think about this one and chew on it.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely like a fetish in and of itself. Yeah, talking about it. And so anyway, that story won't come out until it comes out, but I'm talking about a lot of other things on my Substack about my crazy story. But anyway, it's masturbation in the Mormon Church. Like there was this book called The Miracle of Forgiveness, where the prophet who wrote it referred to men's penises as little factories, you know, and how it was your job to like...
I never read it.
Oh, I never read it either. But again, ex-Mormon culture, we talk about all the things that screwed us all up. And, you know, that's one of them that screwed up a lot of guys, you know, is this book and how they were supposed to not touch themselves. And so, yeah, but sex in Mormon culture, not only are you not allowed to touch yourself at all, but sex is really not talked about. Like, my mother never taught me about sex. Did yours ever teach you about sex?
No, I learned from the internet.
I learned from
and high school.
I had to learn about it before the internet, and so I had to learn about it from the World Book Encyclopedia.
Oh, I figured it out all on my own.
Good for you.
I also ended up pregnant at 17. So I don't know. But I really had the best start.
That's a story too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I was curious, and there was no one to talk to about it because we didn't talk about that kind of stuff at home. So we had a set of encyclopedias. And it's in there.
Yeah. That's essentially
With
what I did.
illustrations.
Yeah.
Fallopian tube.
Scrotum.
We just got flagged.
Sorry.
It's okay.
A ton of people just said no more. I'm done. Sorry.
It's totally
I can be
fine.
a little bit inappropriate
No,
sometimes.
I'm loving it.
Like, yeah.
I think that also brings to like one of the topics when she was talking about it. Like Whitney came into the group and she said, "I found out that he has a Tinder profile, but it's just because of his porn addiction." So that's why we ended up explaining all of that too. But it wasn't. I typically. I mean, there are porn addictions out there. I'm not minimizing anybody's porn addiction, but typically it is just this Mormon culture process.
Yeah.
So that's like the backstory to it.
Yeah.
But then right after that, Taylor, Frankie Paul was having an ectopic pregnancy, and she announced it like in the same group meeting. And that's another Mormon culture thing, is that like suffering is like put up on a pedestal. And so like if you're out suffering the other person, like they feel like outshined. And so that's Whitney got real mad at Taylor because
Now she was
now
gonna get
her
to have
baby's
surgery.
dying, and it like trumps her
Yeah.
her husband's porn addiction. But that's like they just like show it to you. There's no like background to it, like with the culture, like we just gave you. So you got the inside scoop.
Well, and then Whitney, she gets a deal. She gets a brand deal for a vibrator. And she has this internal conflict and external conflict about whether or not she should take...
Sorry, it could be both.
About whether she should take the brand deal, right? So in the only scene where she or anybody else dresses modestly in this whole series, she goes to her mom's house. And like... she changes clothes to go over to her mom's house. I don't know if you noticed that. She's wearing like a sweater vest when she goes there. Like the only time in this whole show that she's not dropping cleavage all over the place. But that was, I was just like, oh, okay, there it is. Yes. She goes and talks to her mom about it and her younger sister and says how much she wants to change the culture in Mormonism to be less repressive and more sex positive, right? And so she's trying to figure out if she can do this, if she wants to do it. And obviously she's being offered $20,000 to do it. And she eventually decides to do it. But her mom says something that just was very, like, telling and kind of disturbing. And I wrote it down. You guys, I have to find the notes. Because she said something about pleasure that just, like, really got my goat. She said... I think when you're seeking pleasure, it can just get out of hand. And you can see, like, the judgment on her face. Literally. No. And I could hear, like, my own, like, mother and, like, oh, yeah.
I seriously think that life is all about finding simple pleasures.
Right? Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing is the Mormon church, like, takes all those things from you
like, no,
and then sells them back to you.
You can have pop.
Yeah, you can have and you can have sex only in marriage, and really you're even kind of led to believe that in marriage only certain kinds of sex are okay and other kinds are not okay, and so even in marriage you're very repressed.
Vanilla.
Well, like in the 80s, like one of the prophets literally came out and said no oral sex. But now it's like they were like, oh, just kidding, you can.
Yeah,
because people like revolted.
Yeah, they were like, no, don't take it away from me.
Yeah, it's sex is very like, it's just supposed to be within the bounds of marriage, and it's supposed to be very vanilla.
Like every time my mom would call me, she would and tell me that I should get married. I would tell her I'm in a lease with him. I can't break that for at least 6 months. Like, that's technically more binding than a marriage. I could go get a marriage annulled.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a piece of paper, I have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actual financial penalty to get out of a lease. And she was like, it's not the same. And I still got, like, lectured about it.
Yeah. And any parents who have kids who are doing anything out of wedlock, they're all so terribly embarrassed. It's a very shameful thing. To have a kid who's living with somebody or to have a kid who had a child out of wedlock. So, we all grew up with those levels of shame. But then, there's just this dichotomy, though, because you have a culture where women are not only expected to be pure and modest, but they're also kind of expected to be sexy. And, like, once you are married, like, you're supposed to keep up your appearance because it's your job to keep your husband happy. And keep him from masturbating.
And you have no like your needs are not important.
Yeah,
just his.
Yeah,
is what the culture typically leads you to believe.
Yeah, and it was my belief when I got married that my job, because he had this masturbation addiction, it was my job to keep him from masturbating. So the pressure on me to put out as a young newlywed was intense. Like it was traumatic for me. Yeah. I have some sad parts of my story, but that's one of them. And so Mormon culture, it can kind of mess you up.
There you have it. There's part 1 of the deep dive into the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives TV show, and hope to see you around for part 2. Love you, bye.